Victoria Langford threw her phone at her assistant's chest. "Find me a pilot in 10 minutes, or my father dies alone." A mop clattered against concrete. Every head turned. The janitor stood there, gray uniform, calloused hands, water dripping at his feet. "I can fly it." Silence. Then laughter erupted across the hangar. Victoria walked toward him, heels clicking like gunshots. She stopped 3 feet away, looked him up and down, and smiled. "Fly this jet, and I'll marry you." What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that this man had once been one of the most decorated test pilots in Air Force history. And the reason he stopped flying would bring her to her knees. Comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. Subscribe and stay with me. This journey is just beginning. Marcus Cole had been mopping the same spot for 23 minutes. He knew because he counted. Counting kept his mind quiet. Counting kept the memories at bay. 23 minutes on one section of concrete, back and forth, push and pull. The rhythm of a man who had learned to disappear. The Langford Aerotech hangar was a cathedral of wealth. Private jets lined up like silver gods waiting to be worshipped. Men in expensive suits walked past Marcus every day without seeing him. Women in designer heels stepped around his mop bucket like it was a piece of furniture. 8 months. That's how long he'd been invisible. And that was exactly how he wanted it. His hands, the same hands that had once gripped the controls of experimental aircraft at 40,000 feet, now gripped a wooden mop handle worn smooth in the exact places where his palms rested. Marcus heard the commotion before he saw it. Rapid footsteps, sharp voices, the unmistakable sound of expensive heels striking concrete at a pace that meant trouble. He didn't look up. Looking up invited attention. Attention invited questions. Questions invited a past he had buried so deep he sometimes forgot it existed. "What do you mean there's no one available?" The voice cut through the hangar like a blade. Victoria Langford, CEO, 34 years old, built her father's regional aviation company into a global empire in less than a decade. Marcus had seen her a handful of times, always moving fast, always surrounded by people scrambling to keep up, always looking through everyone like they were made of glass. "Ma'am, I've called every pilot on our roster." The assistant's voice trembled. "Henderson is in Tokyo. Martinez is on medical leave. Patterson's daughter is getting married today." "I don't care about Patterson's daughter." Marcus kept mopping. Push and pull, left and right. "My father just had a stroke. He's in a hospital in San Francisco. Unconscious. The doctors don't know if he'll make it through the night. And you're telling me no one can fly me there?" "Ma'am, we're trying." "Try harder," the second assistant spoke up. "What about a commercial flight? We could get you on." "A commercial flight takes 3 hours with connections. I need to be there now. My father could die while I'm sitting in some airport terminal eating a pretzel." "Is that what you want?" "No, ma'am, but..." "Then find me a pilot." Victoria's phone rang. She answered it, listened for 10 seconds, and her face changed. The anger drained away, replaced by something raw, something terrified. "How long?" her voice cracked. "Just tell me how long." She listened. "I'm coming. Tell him I'm coming." She ended the call. Her hand shook as she lowered the phone. "They're saying hours, maybe less." She looked at her assistants. "Find me someone who can fly that jet. I don't care who. I don't care what it costs. Find them." The assistants made frantic calls. One paced in circles, phone pressed to her ear. The other typed desperately on a tablet, scrolling through contacts. Marcus watched from the corner of his eye. His mop moved slower now. The rhythm had broken. Everyone's either booked or out of state. Charter companies are slammed. There's some tech conference in San Jose. The earliest I can get anyone is 4 hours. Victoria pressed her palms against her eyes. 4 hours. My father will be dead in 4 hours. The words hung in the air. Marcus's hands tightened on the mop handle. His chest felt strange, tight, like something was pressing against his ribs from the inside. Walk away. Keep mopping. Stay invisible. That was the smart thing to do. That was the safe thing to do. But then Victoria made a sound. Small. Broken. The sound of a daughter realizing she might never say goodbye to her father. And before Marcus could stop himself, the words came out. I can fly it. His own voice surprised him. It had been so long since he'd spoken more than a few words to anyone in this hangar. The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria turned first. Slowly, like she couldn't quite believe what she'd heard. Her assistants turned next. Their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief to something that looked a lot like amusement. Marcus stood there, mop in hand, water pooling at his feet. His uniform was stained. His shoes were worn. His face hadn't seen a razor in 3 days. He looked exactly like what he was supposed to be, a janitor who had no business speaking to the CEO. I'm sorry. Victoria's voice was cold now, controlled. What did you say? I said I can fly it. Marcus nodded toward the Gulfstream G650 sitting on the tarmac. That jet. I can fly it. One of the assistants, the younger one with a tablet, let out a laugh, sharp, disbelieving. Oh my God, is he serious? The other assistant covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. Victoria didn't laugh. She studied Marcus with the same expression she probably used in boardrooms, calculating, assessing, searching for weakness. You. She walked toward him, each step deliberate. You're telling me you can fly a $60 million aircraft? Yes, ma'am. You. She stopped 3 feet away. Her eyes moved from his stained uniform to his worn shoes to the mop in his hands. The man who cleans my floors. Yes, ma'am. The assistants were laughing openly now. One of them leaned against the jet, doubled over. Oh, this is too good! Victoria, please tell me you're not actually considering— Quiet. Victoria didn't take her eyes off Marcus. What's your name? Marcus Cole. Marcus Cole. She repeated it slowly, tasting each syllable. And where exactly did you learn to fly, Marcus Cole? Air Force. The laughter stuttered. Test Pilot Division. The laughter stopped. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Test pilot. Yes, ma'am. 12 years. 12 years as a test pilot, and now you're mopping floors in my hangar. It wasn't a question, but it demanded an answer. Marcus didn't give one. There was no good answer. There was only the truth, and the truth was something he hadn't spoken aloud in 8 years. The assistant with the tablet stepped forward. Ma'am, this is clearly some kind of— I said, quiet. Victoria moved closer to Marcus. Close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something expensive, sharp, like the rest of her. Let me make sure I understand. You're claiming to be a former Air Force test pilot, one of the most elite positions in military aviation, and now you're working as a janitor? I'm not claiming anything, ma'am. I'm telling you the truth. And why should I believe you? Marcus met her eyes. You shouldn't. You have no reason to. But your father is dying in a hospital 300 miles from here, and I'm the only pilot standing in front of you. Victoria's jaw tightened. The hangar had gone quiet. Mechanics had stopped working. Ground crew stood frozen, watching. This is insane, the older assistant shook her head. Victoria, you can't seriously. How long since you've flown? The question was directed at Marcus. He felt it land like a punch. 8 years? 8 years, Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. 8 years since you've touched a cockpit, and you think you can fly my jet. I don't think, ma'am. I know. You know, she crossed her arms. A lot of confidence for a man holding a mop. Confidence has nothing to do with it. Some things you don't forget. Flying is one of them. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the hangar, a tool dropped. The sound echoed. All right, Victoria's voice changed. A smile touched her lips. Cold, calculated. Let me make you an offer, Marcus Cole. The assistants leaned in. Fly this jet to San Francisco. Land it without a scratch. She paused, let the words hang. And I'll marry you. The hangar erupted. The assistants burst into laughter, loud, uncontrolled. One of them actually clapped. The other wiped tears from her eyes. Oh my God, Victoria, that's brutal. Did you see his face? They laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Like Marcus was a joke. Like his offer to help was entertainment for bored rich people. Marcus stood there, mop in hand, water dripping onto concrete. His face burned. Not from anger, from something deeper. The weight of being seen and dismissed in the same breath. The humiliation of offering something real and having it thrown back as a punchline. Victoria watched him. Her smile widened, but her eyes stayed cold. She was enjoying this. The power, the cruelty, the way she could reduce a man to nothing with a few words. Well? She tilted her head. No response? Nothing to say? Marcus looked at her, then at the assistants, still laughing, then at the jet sitting on the tarmac, silver and silent. 8 years ago, he'd made a promise to himself, to Sarah, to the memory of a young man who died because Marcus couldn't save him. Never again. Never fly again. Never risk it again. But promises made in grief don't account for moments like this. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. Get back to work, Mr. Cole. The floors won't mop themselves. She turned and walked toward her office, assistants trailing behind, still giggling. Marcus watched them go. His knuckles were white around the mop handle. The jet sat there, waiting. $60 million of precision engineering. Twin Rolls-Royce engines. Range of 7,000 nautical miles. Top speed of Mach 0.925. Marcus knew every specification. He'd studied this aircraft years ago, back when he still believed he'd fly again someday. His feet moved before his mind caught up. He set the mop against the wall, straightened his uniform, and walked toward the jet. Hey, where's he going? Is he actually? Someone should stop him. But no one did. They just watched as the janitor crossed the hangar, climbed the stairs of the Gulfstream G650, and disappeared inside. The cockpit was exactly as Marcus remembered. Leather seats, digital displays, the familiar smell of aviation, fuel and metal, and possibility. His hands moved without thinking. Muscle memory. 8 years dormant, but not dead. Master switch. On. The instrument panel lit up. Battery. Check. The displays glowed. Fuel pumps. Engaged. The jet hummed to life. Marcus ran through the pre-flight checklist with the precision of a man who had done it 10,000 times. Hydraulics. Avionics. Flight controls. Each system responded perfectly. His hands weren't shaking. That surprised him. The last time he'd sat in a cockpit, his hands had shaken so badly he couldn't grip the controls. The therapist had called it psychosomatic response. The Air Force had called it unfit for duty. Marcus had called it the end. But now, here, with the familiar weight of the yoke in his hands and the familiar sound of engines warming up around him, something felt different. Not healed, not whole, but close. Footsteps on the stairs behind him. "You're actually doing this." Victoria stood in the cockpit doorway. Her face had changed. The mockery was gone, replaced by something he couldn't identify. "Yes, ma'am." She didn't move, just watched him, arms crossed. "If you crash this jet, you understand what that means." "I won't crash it." $60 million. "I understand." "My father's company. My reputation." Marcus looked up at her. "Your father is dying, ma'am. We can discuss liability later." Something flickered in her eyes. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. Without another word, she moved to the cabin. He heard her sit down, heard the seatbelt click. Marcus turned back to the controls. His hand hovered over the radio. 8 years. 8 years since he'd spoken to a control tower. 8 years since he'd requested clearance. 8 years since he'd trusted himself with the lives of passengers. But his voice, when it came, was steady, professional, like no time had passed at all. "Langford Tower, this is Langford 1 requesting clearance for departure, runway 27. A pause, then, "Langford 1, you are cleared for departure, runway 27. Wind light and variable. Visibility unlimited." "Roger Tower, Langford 1 cleared for departure, runway 27. Marcus released the brakes. The jet rolled forward, slow at first, then faster. The runway stretched ahead, gray and endless. Marcus pushed the throttle forward. The engines responded with a roar that vibrated through his chest. 60 knots. 80. 100. The world outside blurred. White lines, concrete, blue sky. Marcus pulled back on the yoke. The nose lifted. The wheels left the ground. And for the first time in 8 years, Marcus Cole was flying. The ground fell away. Los Angeles spread below them. Buildings, highways, the glittering Pacific in the distance. Marcus leveled off at 3,000 feet, trimmed the aircraft, and let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His hands were still steady. "That was..." Victoria's voice came from behind him. Different now. Quiet. "How did you do that?" "Do what?" "The takeoff. It felt like nothing, like we just floated." Marcus didn't answer. He was too busy listening to the engines, feeling the aircraft respond to his inputs, remembering what it meant to be exactly where he belonged. "Where did you really learn to fly?" "I told you. Air Force." "That wasn't a normal Air Force takeoff. I've been on enough flights to know the difference." Marcus set the autopilot, programmed the route to San Francisco. The jet adjusted course smoothly. "Experimental Aircraft Division," he said finally. "We tested planes that weren't supposed to exist yet, pushed them past their limits, found out what they could handle." "That sounds dangerous." "It was." "Is that why you stopped?" Marcus's hands tightened on the yoke. The question was simple. The answer was anything but. "Life changed," he said. It wasn't enough, he knew that, but it was all he could give. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, "My father was a pilot. Did you know that?" "No, ma'am." "Started the company with one plane and a dream. That's what he always said. One plane and a dream." Her voice caught slightly. He taught me everything. How to read a balance sheet, how to negotiate a deal, how to know when someone was lying. Sounds like a good man. He is. He's... She stopped. I haven't spoken to him in 5 years. Marcus glanced at the mirror. Victoria was staring out the window, her reflection pale against the endless blue. We had a fight about the company, about my decisions. He said I was too aggressive, too ruthless. I said he was too old-fashioned, too cautious. She laughed bitterly. We're both stubborn, too stubborn to pick up the phone and say, sorry. 5 years is a long time. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper. And now he might die without knowing that I forgive him, that I need him, that everything I've built was because I wanted him to be proud of me. The cockpit was quiet, except for the steady hum of the engines. Marcus understood more than he could say. He understood regret. He understood words left unspoken. He understood the weight of time wasted on pride. You'll get there, he said. We'll get there. Victoria didn't respond, but in the mirror, he saw her wipe her eyes. They flew in silence for a while. The California coastline passed below them, green and brown and beautiful. Can I ask you something? Victoria's voice had steadied. Yes, ma'am. Why are you really working as a janitor? Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd known this question was coming, had dreaded it since the moment he opened his mouth in the hangar. It's complicated. We have time. He didn't want to answer, didn't want to crack open the door he'd sealed shut 8 years ago. But something about being in the air again, something about the honesty of flight, made the words come anyway. I had a co-pilot once, young kid, 26, first deployment with the test division. Marcus's voice was flat, mechanical. His name was Lieutenant Jason Mitchell. Victoria was silent, listening. We were testing a new flight system, high altitude, low oxygen conditions, pushing the aircraft to its limits. That's what we did. That's what we were good at. Marcus paused. Something failed. The aircraft went into a spin. I fought it, did everything I was trained to do, got us down. But Mitchell didn't make it. The words hung in the air, heavy as stone. The review board cleared me, called it equipment failure. Nothing I could have done. They offered me another assignment, another aircraft, another chance to fly. And you said no. Marcus nodded slowly. I couldn't get back in a cockpit without seeing his face, hearing his voice, the sound he made when the aircraft started spinning, and he realized. He stopped, swallowed hard. I was supposed to keep him safe. That was my job, and I failed. That wasn't your fault. Maybe not, but he's still dead, and I'm still here. Victoria was quiet for a long time. What was he like? She asked finally. Mitchell. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. Eager, annoying, talked too much about his girlfriend back home, showed everyone pictures of her constantly, said he was going to propose when he got back. Did he? Never got the chance. The engines hummed. The sky stretched endless ahead. For 8 years I couldn't fly, couldn't even look at an aircraft without feeling sick. I took the janitor job because it was invisible, because no one expected anything from me, because I could disappear. But you didn't disappear today. No, I didn't. Why? Marcus thought about it. Thought about Victoria's face when she'd gotten that phone call. The fear, the desperation, the sound of a daughter terrified of losing her father. Because you needed help, he said simply, and I could help. Victoria didn't respond for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer. I was cruel to you, In the hangar. The things I said. You were scared. That's not an excuse. No, but it's a reason. Fear makes people do ugly things. Marcus checked the instruments. We're starting our descent. 20 minutes to landing. Marcus. It was the first time she'd used his first name. Yes? Thank you. He nodded once, didn't trust himself to speak. The descent was smooth. San Francisco appeared below them. The bay, the bridges, the city rising from the water like a dream. Marcus contacted the tower, received clearance, lined up his approach. The runway stretched ahead, gray and waiting. He'd done this 1,000 times, but it had never mattered this much. His hands moved with precision. Flaps adjusted, landing gear deployed, airspeed decreasing. The ground rose to meet them. Closer. Closer. The wheels touched down with barely a whisper. The jet rolled along the runway, smooth and controlled, slowing gradually until it came to a complete stop. Perfect. Marcus sat back in his seat. His hands were still on the controls. Steady. Sure. Behind him, he heard Victoria release a breath she'd been holding. That, she said quietly, was the smoothest landing I've ever felt. Marcus didn't respond. He was staring at his hands. The hands that had just landed a $60 million aircraft. The hands that had mopped floors for 8 months. The hands that had failed to save Jason Mitchell. They looked the same, but something had changed. For the first time in 8 years, Marcus Cole felt like a pilot again. The ground crew surrounded the jet within minutes. Faces pressed against the windows of the terminal. Phones out, recording. Word had spread somehow. The janitor who flew the CEO's private jet. Marcus shut down the engines one by one. The instruments went dark. The hum faded to silence. He unbuckled his harness and stood slowly. His legs felt strange, like they'd forgotten how to support him on solid ground. Victoria appeared in the cockpit doorway. Her eyes were red, but her posture had changed. Straighter, stronger, ready for whatever waited at the hospital. My driver is meeting me outside, she hesitated. Will you be okay getting back? I'll figure it out. She nodded, started to turn, then stopped. Marcus? Yes? What you did today. She shook her head slightly. I don't know how to thank you. Go see your father. That's enough. Victoria held his gaze for a moment longer. Then she was gone, heels clicking down the stairs, voice already on the phone arranging her ride to the hospital. Marcus stood alone in the cockpit. The leather seat still held the impression of his body. The controls still felt warm from his hands. He'd done it. After 8 years of telling himself he'd never fly again, he'd done it. But instead of triumph, he felt hollow, like he'd opened a door he'd sworn to keep closed, and now he couldn't shut it again. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Noah asking when you'll be home. Everything okay? Marcus typed back quickly. Delayed at work. Be home by dinner. Give him a hug from me. He walked down the stairs, past the ground crew who stared at him like he'd grown a second head, past the terminal workers whispering behind their hands. A Langford employee handed him a ticket for a commercial flight back to Los Angeles. Ms. Langford's orders, the young man said. First class. Marcus almost laughed. This morning, he'd been mopping floors. Now he was flying first class. The flight home was 3 hours of sitting with his thoughts. He ordered a whiskey, then a second one. The alcohol didn't help. If anything, it made the memories sharper. Mitchell's face, the spinning aircraft, the alarms. Sarah's voice in the hospital waiting room. "You're alive. That's what matters. You're alive." But Mitchell wasn't. And eventually, Sarah wasn't either. Marcus landed at LAX just after 6. He took a cab home, watched the city slide past the window. All those lights, all those lives. People going about their business, not knowing or caring that a janitor had flown a jet today. The apartment building looked the same as always. 3 floors of tired brick and narrow hallways. Home for the past 2 years, ever since he'd sold the house. The house had been Sarah's dream. Living there without her felt like wearing a dead woman's clothes. Mrs. Chen met him at the door. 73 years old, gray hair always pinned back, eyes that saw everything. "You look different," she said. "Long day." She picked up her bag. "Noah ate his dinner, did his homework. He's in his room." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." She paused at the door. "He asked about airplanes today. Wanted to know if you ever flew them." Marcus's throat tightened. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to ask you." She patted his arm gently. "Some questions only a father can answer." She left. The apartment fell quiet. Marcus walked to Noah's room. The door was open a crack, light spilling into the hallway. He pushed it open slowly. Noah was sitting on his bed, a book open in his lap. 5 years old, dark hair that never stayed flat, eyes that looked exactly like Sarah's. When he saw Marcus, his whole face lit up. "Dad!" He launched himself off the bed and into Marcus's arms. Marcus caught him, held him tight, breathed in the smell of soap and peanut butter and childhood. "Hey, buddy. You're late." "I know. I'm sorry." "Where were you?" Marcus carried him back to the bed, sat down with Noah in his lap. "I had to do something at work. Something important." "What?" Marcus hesitated. He'd spent years protecting Noah from his past, from the pain, from the complicated truth of who his father used to be. But Mrs. Chen's words echoed in his mind. Some questions only a father can answer. "I flew an airplane today." Noah's eyes went wide. "A real airplane?" "A real airplane. A big jet." "Was it scary?" Marcus thought about the takeoff, the controls in his hands, the moment the wheels left the ground. "A little bit, yeah." "But you did it anyway?" "I did it anyway." Noah considered this with the seriousness only a 5-year-old could muster. "Mom said you used to fly airplanes. Before." Marcus's heart clenched. "She told you that?" "She said you were the best pilot in the whole world. She said you could fly anything." Sarah, even gone, she was still shaping their son, still speaking truth into his life. "I used to fly," Marcus said carefully, "a long time ago. Then I stopped." "Why?" The question hung there. Simple. Impossible. "Because something bad happened. And I got scared." Noah nodded slowly, like this made perfect sense. "I get scared sometimes too, at school, when the big kids are mean." "What do you do when you're scared?" "I remember what Mom said." Noah's voice was matter-of-fact. "She said being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do it anyway." Marcus couldn't speak. His throat was closed, his eyes burning. Sarah's words, in their son's mouth, reaching across death itself to remind him who he was supposed to be. "Your mom was very smart," he managed. "I know," Noah yawned. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy?" "If you fly airplanes again, can I come?" Marcus pulled him closer. "We'll see." "That means maybe." "That means maybe." Noah smiled, already half asleep. "I think you should do it. Fly again. Mom would be happy. He was asleep within minutes. Marcus sat there holding him, watching his chest rise and fall, feeling the small, warm weight of the only person left in the world who mattered. Mom would be happy. Would she? Would Sarah want him to fly again? Or would she want him to stay safe, stay grounded, stay invisible? He thought about the woman he'd married 12 years ago. The second-grade teacher with the loud laugh and the gentle hands. The woman who'd held him together after Mitchell died. Who'd wiped his tears and made him eat and dragged him back from the edge of something dark. She'd believed in him, even when he couldn't believe in himself. "You'll fly again someday," she'd told him once, her hand on his chest, over his heart. "When you're ready. When you remember that you were meant for the sky." 3 weeks later, she was dead. A drunk driver. A rainy highway. A phone call that ended his world. Marcus laid Noah down gently, pulled the blanket up to his chin, and left the room. He stood at the kitchen window for a long time, watching the city lights, thinking about Sarah, about Mitchell, about all the people he'd lost, and about the one person he couldn't afford to lose. Noah needed stability. He needed a father who came home every night, who made dinner and helped with homework and read bedtime stories, not a father who chased ghosts in the sky. Marcus had made his choice 3 years ago, standing at Sarah's grave with a 2-year-old in his arms. No more risks, no more flying, just survival. But today had changed something. Today had cracked the wall he'd built around himself, and he didn't know how to seal it back up. The next morning, Marcus went back to work, put on the gray uniform, picked up the mop, started in the north corner of the hangar, same as always. But nothing was the same. People looked at him now, whispered when he passed. A mechanic, Tom, his name tag said, nodded at Marcus and gave him a thumbs up. Marcus just kept mopping, push and pull, left and right. Around 11, one of Victoria's assistants appeared, the younger one, who'd laughed the hardest yesterday. "Mr. Cole?" Marcus looked up. "Yes?" She couldn't meet his eyes. "Mrs. Langford wants to see you, in her office." "I'm working." "She said to come now." Marcus set down the mop, followed the assistant across the hangar, past the jets, past the mechanics who stopped to watch. Victoria's office was on the second floor. Glass walls, expensive furniture, a view of the entire runway. She was standing at the window when he entered, her back to him. "Close the door." He did. "Sit down." He didn't. "I'd rather stand, ma'am." She turned. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair less perfect than usual. But there was something else in her face too, something that hadn't been there yesterday. "My father is stable. The doctors say he'll recover." "I'm glad." "I sat with him all night. He woke up around 4 in the morning. First thing he said was my name." Her voice cracked slightly. "I told him I was sorry. For everything. For the years we wasted fighting." "What did he say?" "He said he already knew. He said he'd been waiting for me to figure it out." She laughed softly. Stubborn old man. Marcus said nothing. This wasn't about him. He was just the janitor who'd gotten her there in time. Victoria walked to her desk, picked up an envelope. "I looked into your records." Marcus's shoulders tensed. "You had no right." "I know. I'm sorry. But I needed to understand." She opened a folder. "Captain Marcus Cole, 12 years Air Force, Test Pilot Division. 2 tours overseas. Medal of Valor for actions in Afghanistan. Commendation from the Joint Chiefs for..." She looked up. "You were one of the best pilots in the country." "That was a long time ago." "It was 8 years ago." "That's not that long." She closed the folder. "I also found out about Lieutenant Mitchell. And about your wife." Marcus's jaw tightened. That's private.
I know, and I'm sorry for your losses. Both of them.
He didn't respond, didn't trust himself to speak. Victoria held out the envelope.
This is for you.
What is it?
A contract. I want to hire you as a pilot for Langford Aerotech. Full benefits, competitive salary, flexible schedule.
Marcus didn't take the envelope. I'm not a pilot anymore.
You flew my jet yesterday. Perfectly. After 8 years without practice.
She stepped closer.
That's not something that just goes away.
I appreciate the offer, but no.
Why?
Because I have a son, a 5-year-old who needs me home, on the ground, safe. Victoria nodded slowly, like she'd expected this answer.
What's his name?
Noah.
Noah.
She set the envelope on her desk.
I understand wanting to protect your child. I do.
But I also know what it's like to watch someone you love give up on themselves. I'm not giving up. I'm making a choice. Are you? Or are you hiding? The words hit harder than they should have. Marcus took a step back. Ms. Langford, you spent 8 months invisible in my hangar, mopping floors, cleaning toilets, pretending to be something you're not. Her voice was gentle now, not cruel. I mocked you yesterday because I couldn't see past the uniform. But I see you now, Marcus. I see who you really are. And you're not a janitor. What I am or was doesn't matter. What matters is who my son needs me to be.
And who is that? A father who's afraid? A man who runs from his past?
She shook her head.
Children don't need perfect parents, Marcus. They need real ones. They need parents who show them that it's okay to fall down, as long as you get back up.
Marcus's hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists. You don't know anything about being a parent.
No, I don't.
Victoria's eyes were wet.
But I know about regret. I know about wasting years running from the people who love you. I almost lost my father because I was too proud to pick up the phone.
She picked up the envelope again, held it out to him.
Don't make the same mistake. Don't let fear steal the rest of your life.
Marcus stared at the envelope. His whole body felt tight, coiled. I can't.
Yes, you can.
You don't understand.
Then help me understand.
Her voice rose.
Tell me what happened. Tell me why a man who could fly anything walks away from the sky.
Because I killed someone. The words exploded out of him, raw, broken. 8 years of silence shattered in a single moment. Victoria went still. Mitchell trusted me. He was a kid, 26 years old, barely old enough to shave, and he trusted me to keep him safe. And I failed. The aircraft failed, and I couldn't fix it, and he died. He died scared and confused and calling for his mother. And I just sat there. I sat there and watched him die, and I couldn't do anything. Marcus's voice cracked. His eyes were burning. And then Sarah, my wife. She was the only reason I kept going after Mitchell. She believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And then God took her too. Like I hadn't lost enough. Like I hadn't suffered enough. He was crying now. He didn't care. So don't tell me about fear. Don't tell me about running. I'm not running from anything. I'm protecting the only person I have left. Because if I fly again and something happens, and Noah loses me too. He couldn't finish. Couldn't breathe. Victoria crossed the room slowly. She stood in front of him, close enough to touch. Marcus. He couldn't look at her. What happened to Mitchell wasn't your fault. It was equipment failure. Nothing you could have done. I know what the report said. But you don't believe it. It doesn't matter what I believe. He's still dead. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what would Sarah say if she were here right now? Marcus's head snapped up. Don't. What would she tell you? I said, don't. Would she want you to hide? To spend the rest of your life mopping floors and pretending to be less than you are? She'd want me to keep Noah safe. And she'd want you to be happy. Victoria's voice was soft but certain. She loved you. I can tell from the way you talk about her. A woman who loves a man like that doesn't want him to disappear. She wants him to live, really live. Marcus closed his eyes. Sarah's face appeared in his mind. Her smile, her voice. Do the scary thing. I can't promise you won't get hurt, Victoria continued. I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen. But I can promise you this. The man I saw fly yesterday is too good to waste. And your son deserves a father who isn't afraid to be who he really is. She pressed the envelope into his hands. Take it home. Think about it. Talk to Noah. And then decide. Marcus looked down at the envelope. White paper, black text. A future he'd sworn never to consider. I pulled your records for another reason, Victoria said quietly. I wanted to know what kind of man you are. And do you know what I found? He shook his head. I found a hero. Not because of the medals or the commendations, but because when you saw someone in trouble yesterday, you didn't think about yourself. You didn't think about the risks or the pain or the fear. You just helped. She smiled faintly. That's not a janitor, Marcus. That's a pilot. And pilots belong in the sky. Marcus stood there, envelope in hand, tears drying on his face. I need time, he said. Take all the time you need. He turned and walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. Ms. Langford. Victoria. He looked back at her. Thank you for getting me to San Francisco. For whatever this is. Just thank you. She nodded. Thank me by not giving up. Marcus left her office, walked through the hangar, picked up his mop, and finished his shift like nothing had happened. But the envelope sat in his pocket the whole time, heavy as a stone, full of possibility and terror. That night, after Noah was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table. The envelope lay before him, still sealed. He stared at it for a long time. Then he opened it and began to read. The contract was 3 pages long. Marcus read every word twice. Senior pilot, Langford Aerotech. Salary that made his eyes water. Benefits that would cover everything. Health insurance, retirement, life insurance for Noah. A schedule that promised flexibility, promised time with his son. It was everything he'd stopped hoping for. And it terrified him. Marcus set the papers down and walked to the window. The city lights blurred through the glass. Somewhere out there, planes were taking off and landing, carrying people to places they needed to be. He'd been one of those pilots once. One of the best. But that was before Mitchell. Before Sarah. Before he'd learned that the people you love can disappear in an instant, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Victoria. No pressure. Just wanted you to know the offer stands. Take your time. Marcus didn't respond. He went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the cockpit, felt the controls, heard the engines, and underneath it all, Mitchell's voice. Young, scared. What do we do? What do we do? Around 3 in the morning, Marcus gave up on sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed and did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed. Not to God exactly. More to Sarah, to the universe, to whoever might be listening.
"Tell me what to do," he whispered. "I don't know what to do."
The apartment was silent. No answer came. But when Marcus finally fell asleep just before dawn, he dreamed of flying. Not the crash, not the alarms, just flying. Smooth and steady, through clouds that parted like curtains into endless blue sky. He woke up with tears on his face and a strange feeling in his chest. Something that felt almost like hope. The next morning, Marcus made breakfast. Eggs and toast, Noah's favorite. The contract sat on the counter, visible but untouched. Noah climbed onto his chair, still in his pajamas, hair sticking up in every direction. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy?" "What's that?" He pointed at the papers. Marcus hesitated. He'd planned to wait, to think about it more, to figure out the right words. But Noah was looking at him with Sarah's eyes, and suddenly the right words didn't seem to matter. "It's a job offer," Marcus said. "Someone wants me to be a pilot again." Noah's eyes went wide. "A real pilot? Like before?" "Like before." "Are you going to do it?" Marcus sat down across from his son. "I don't know yet. That's what I wanted to talk to you about." "Me?" Noah looked confused. "Why me?" "Because if I take this job, things would change. I might have to travel sometimes, be away from home, and I wanted to know how you'd feel about that." Noah was quiet for a moment. His small face scrunched up in concentration, the same expression Sarah used to make when she was thinking hard about something. "Would you be gone a lot?" "Some days, but I'd always come home." "Promise?" "Promise." Noah nodded slowly. Then he said something that stopped Marcus's heart. "Mom told me you'd fly again someday." Marcus couldn't speak. "She said you were sad because something bad happened, but she said one day you'd remember that you belong in the sky." Noah picked up his fork, started pushing eggs around his plate. "She said I should be brave when that day came, because you'd need me to be brave too." Sarah. Even now, even gone, still guiding them both. "When did she tell you this?" Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "Before she went to heaven, she made me promise to remember." Noah looked up. "I remember, Dad. I remember everything she said." Marcus reached across the table and took his son's hand. Small fingers wrapped around his. "Are you scared?" Noah asked. "Yes." "That's okay. Mom said being scared is normal. She said the brave thing is doing it anyway." Marcus closed his eyes. The tears came before he could stop them. "Dad, are you crying?" "Yeah, buddy. I'm crying." "Is it because you miss Mom?" "Partly. And partly because I'm really proud of you." Noah smiled. That smile that was all Sarah. "So are you going to do it? Be a pilot again?" Marcus looked at his son, looked at the contract on the counter, looked at the picture of Sarah on the refrigerator, smiling in the summer sun. "Yeah," he said. "I think I am." Noah jumped off his chair and threw his arms around Marcus's neck. "I knew it! I knew you would! Can I come see you fly? Can I?" "We'll see, buddy. We'll see." That afternoon, Marcus called Victoria. "I'm in," he said. There was a pause. Then, "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He could hear the smile in her voice. "That's the bravest kind of yes." Training started the following Monday. Marcus had forgotten how brutal it could be. 12-hour days in the simulator. Emergency procedures drilled over and over until his hands moved without thinking. Navigation systems, weather patterns, mechanical failures. Every scenario designed to push him past his limits.
Victoria brought in specialists, former military pilots, air show veterans, men and women who'd spent their lives in the sky and knew exactly how to break a pilot down and build him back up. Marcus failed constantly at first, made mistakes he never would have made 8 years ago. His timing was off. His reflexes were slow. The instructors shook their heads and made notes on their tablets. "You're rusty," Tom Rivera told him after a particularly bad session. Tom was the lead mechanic, but he'd been a Navy pilot in another life. "That's normal. You'll get it back." "What if I don't?" "You will." Tom handed him a cup of coffee. "I've seen pilots come back from worse than 8 years off. You've got the instincts. They're just buried under all that fear." "How do you know I'm afraid?" "Because I can see it in your hands. The way you grip the controls too tight. The way you hesitate before every decision." Tom sat down beside him. "Fear's not the enemy, Captain. Hesitation is. Fear keeps you sharp. Hesitation gets you killed." Marcus stared into his coffee. "I froze once, in a real emergency. My co-pilot died because I couldn't think fast enough." "That's not what the report said." "The report was wrong." Tom was quiet for a moment. "You really believe that?" "I know it." "Then prove it wrong." Tom stood up. "Get back in the simulator. Run the scenario again. And this time, don't think. Just fly." Marcus went back, ran the scenario. Failed again. But he was faster this time, closer. He ran it again, and again, and again. By the end of the second week, his hands had stopped shaking. By the end of the third week, he was passing scenarios he'd failed a dozen times before. By the end of the fourth week, the instructors had stopped shaking their heads. "You're getting there," Victoria told him one evening. She'd started coming to watch the training sessions, standing behind the glass like a silent guardian. "How do you feel?" "Tired, sore, old." She laughed. "You're 42. That's not old." "Tell that to my back." They were standing outside the simulator bay, the hangar quiet around them. Most of the staff had gone home. "Noah asked about you," Marcus said. "Did he?" "He wanted to know if you were the lady who gave me the job." I said yes. "What did he say?" "He said I should thank you. And then he asked if you liked dinosaurs." Victoria smiled. "Tell him yes, especially the flying ones." Pterodactyls weren't dinosaurs. They were pterosaurs. "Are you seriously correcting me right now?" "Noah would. He's very particular about his prehistoric animals." They stood there in comfortable silence. Something had shifted between them over the past weeks. The coldness was gone. The mockery was gone. In their place was something Marcus couldn't quite name. "Your final certification is Friday," Victoria said. Marcus's stomach tightened. "I know. The whole technical team will be watching. It's standard protocol, but it feels like a trial." "Yes." "I'll be ready." "I know you will." She touched his arm briefly. "Whatever happens, Marcus, I'm glad you said yes." She walked away before he could respond. Friday came too fast. Marcus woke at 5. Couldn't eat. Did push-ups on the floor of his apartment until his arms gave out, trying to burn off the nervous energy. Noah was still asleep when Mrs. Chen arrived. "Big day," she said. "Yeah, you'll do fine." "How do you know?" She smiled. "Because I've watched you these past weeks. You're different now. Stronger. More like the man your wife used to talk about." Marcus looked at her. "Sarah talked to you about me?" "All the time. She was so proud of you. Even when you couldn't fly anymore, she knew you'd find your way back." Mrs. Chen patted his cheek gently. "Go. Be the pilot she believed you were." At the hangar, people were already gathering. Engineers, mechanics, flight instructors. Victoria stood with them, professional and composed. Marcus entered the simulator bay. The cockpit replica waited,
Captain Cole, the lead instructor's voice came through the speakers. We'll run a standard certification scenario. Emergency procedures. Your responses will be evaluated. Understood. Marcus climbed into the simulator, strapped the harness, put on the headset. The scenario began. Normal takeoff. Standard climb. Everything routine. Then the first warning light. Hydraulic pressure dropping. Marcus responded immediately. Backup systems engaged. Controls adjusted. Problem contained. Next came an electrical fault. Half the instruments went dark. Marcus switched to manual, calculated heading by compass, maintained altitude by feel. Still manageable. And then everything went wrong at once. Engine fire warning. Both engines, simultaneously. The cockpit filled with alarms, red lights everywhere. The sound was deafening, the exact same sound from 8 years ago. Marcus's hands froze on the controls. No, 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 no. The altimeter was dropping. 3,000 feet, 2,500, 2,000. Captain Cole! The instructor's voice was distant, muffled. Respond to the emergency! But Marcus couldn't move. He was back in that cockpit, Mitchell beside him. The aircraft spinning, the ground rushing up. What do we do? What do we do? Mitchell's voice, young, terrified. The last words Marcus ever heard him speak. 1,500 feet. 1,000. This was how it ended. This was how it always ended. And then, through the roar of the alarms, Marcus heard something else. A small voice. Familiar. Certain. You're the best pilot ever, Dad. Noah. And underneath that, another voice. Softer. Warmer. You were meant for the sky, Marcus. When you're ready. Sarah. Marcus's hands moved. He shut down both engines, activated fire suppression, trimmed for optimal glide ratio. 500 feet. He found a clearing in the simulation, lined up the approach. No power, just physics, lift and drag, speed and angle. 300 feet. His hands were steady now. His mind was clear. 200 feet. 100. The wheels touched hard. The simulator shook violently. But they were down. They were down and they were stopped, and the alarms went silent. Marcus sat there, chest heaving, hands still on the controls. The instructor's voice came through the headset, different now. Shutdown complete. Emergency landing successful. Marcus pulled off the headset, climbed out of the simulator. His legs were shaking so badly he could barely stand. The observation room door opened. Victoria came through first. Behind her, the engineers, the mechanics, Tom Rivera. They were all staring at him. Then Tom started clapping. One person, then two, then everyone. Applause filled the bay, echoing off the walls. Marcus stood there, confused, overwhelmed. Victoria walked up to him. Her eyes were wet. That, she said quietly, was a level 5 emergency scenario, the hardest test we have. Most pilots fail it on the first attempt. Some never pass it at all. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to. She took his hand. You passed, Marcus. Perfectly. The door opened again. Mrs. Chen stepped through, and beside her, bouncing with excitement, was Noah. Dad! He ran across the floor, and Marcus caught him, lifted him up, held him so tight. Everyone was clapping, Noah said. You did it! You did it! How are you here? Mrs. Langford called. She said I should see this. Noah pulled back, eyes shining. I told you, Dad. I told you you're the best pilot ever. Marcus couldn't speak. He just held his son, tears streaming down his face. Surrounded by people who were finally seeing him,
for who he really was. Victoria stepped forward. "There's something else." She pulled out her phone, showed him an email. "This came in yesterday. I was waiting until after your test to show you." Marcus read the subject line: International Aviation Expo, Dubai. His hands started shaking again. "They want a demonstration pilot," Victoria said. "Someone to showcase precision flying for corporate clients, military observers, press from 40 countries. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because they saw your training footage, the scenarios you've been running, the way you handle the aircraft." She paused. "They want you, Marcus. By name." "I can't. There's more." Victoria scrolled down the email. "Orion Industries is sponsoring the event. If the demonstration is successful, they're offering a full educational scholarship to the pilot's family." Marcus's heart stopped. What? Full scholarship, through college, for Noah. He looked at the email, looked at his son in his arms, looked at Victoria. "They want you to fly for 20 minutes, Victoria said, "in front of the world. And in return, Noah's future is secured." Noah tugged his sleeve. "Dad, what's a scholarship?" "It means," Marcus's voice broke. "It means you could go to any school you want, any college, everything paid for." "Because you're flying?" "Because I'm flying." Noah's face lit up with that smile, Sarah's smile. "Then you have to do it, Dad. You have to." Marcus looked at his son, at the contract he'd signed, at the test he'd just passed, at the impossible future suddenly within reach. 3 months ago, he'd been invisible, a janitor mopping floors, a man hiding from his past. Now he was standing in a hangar full of people who believed in him, holding his son, being offered everything he'd lost. The fear was still there, cold and familiar. But so was something else, something stronger. "When?" Marcus asked. Victoria smiled. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare for the biggest moment of his life. Marcus pulled Noah closer and looked at Victoria. "I'll do it." The 3 weeks that followed were the hardest of Marcus's life. Every morning he woke at 4. Every night he collapsed into bed after midnight. In between, he pushed himself harder than he'd ever pushed before. Harder than the Air Force. Harder than test pilot training. Harder than anything he'd done in his previous life. Victoria brought in a new instructor, a man named Colonel James Whitfield, retired Air Force, who'd trained pilots for the Thunderbirds for 15 years. He was 63 years old, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. "You've got skills," Whitfield told Marcus after their first session. "But skills aren't enough for Dubai. You need precision. You need showmanship. You need to make 60,000 people hold their breath." "How do I do that?" "By forgetting everything you know about flying safe and learning to fly beautiful." It was a different kind of training, not emergency procedures and system failures. This was art. Every turn calculated to the degree. Every climb timed to the second. Every maneuver designed to look impossible while being perfectly controlled. Marcus struggled at first. His instincts were survival instincts. Get the aircraft down safe, protect the passengers, minimize risk. Whitfield wanted something else entirely. "You're flying scared," the colonel said after Marcus's third failed attempt at a precision barrel roll. "I can see it in every move you make." "I'm being careful." "Careful is for commercial pilots. You're not flying passengers to Cleveland. You're performing for the world." Whitfield crossed his arms. "Why did you agree to do this?" "For my son." "That's a good reason, but it's not enough." Whitfield leaned forward. "Why did you really agree?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't know how to explain it. The feeling in the simulator when he'd passed the level 5 test. The way Noah had looked at him. The voice in his head that sounded like Sarah, saying he was meant for the sky. "Let me tell you something," Whitfield said. "I've trained hundreds of pilots. The good ones fly with their hands. The great ones fly with their hearts. Right now, you're flying with your fear. How do I stop?" "You don't stop being afraid. You fly through it. You take every piece of pain and loss and terror you've ever felt, and you use it. You let it fuel you instead of freeze you. That's easier said than done. Everything worth doing is." Whitfield stood up. "Again, from the top, and this time, fly like the man your wife believed you were." Marcus went back up, failed again, and again. But somewhere around the 10th attempt, something shifted. He stopped thinking about the maneuvers and started feeling them. Stopped calculating and started flowing. The barrel roll came out perfect. The vertical climb hit exactly where it needed to. The recovery was so smooth, even Whitfield smiled. "Better," the colonel said. "Much better." By the end of the first week, Marcus was hitting 90% of his marks. By the end of the second week, 95. By the end of the third week, Whitfield declared him ready. "You're not the best pilot I've ever trained," he said on their final day. "But you might be the bravest." "Why do you say that?" "Because most men who've been through what you have never fly again. They let the fear win. You didn't." Whitfield extended his hand. "Good luck in Dubai, Captain Cole. Make us proud." Marcus shook his hand. "Thank you, Colonel, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've got 60,000 people on their feet." The flight to Dubai was 14 hours. Victoria had arranged everything: first-class tickets, hotel accommodations, ground transport. Noah came with them, along with Mrs. Chen. Victoria had insisted. "He should see this," she'd said. "He should see his father fly." On the plane, Noah couldn't sit still. He pressed his face to the window during takeoff, peppered the flight attendants with questions about the aircraft, and talked non-stop about what Dubai would be like. "Will there be camels? Can we see the tall building? The really tall one? Will Dad be on TV?" Mrs. Chen answered patiently, while Marcus sat across the aisle, reviewing his routine for the 100th time. Victoria appeared beside him. "You should sleep. Big day tomorrow." "Can't sleep." "Nervous?" "Terrified." She sat down in the empty seat next to him. "You know what I was doing 3 months ago?" "Running your company." "Mocking a janitor in my hangar." She shook her head. "I think about that day a lot. The things I said. The way I treated you." "You already apologized." "I know, but apologies don't erase what happened. They just acknowledge it." She looked at him. "I was cruel, Marcus. I was scared and desperate, and I took it out on you. That's not who I want to be." "We all do things we regret when we're afraid." "That's very generous of you." "It's the truth." Marcus turned to face her. "You gave me my life back, Victoria. Whatever happened before, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you did after." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "My father is coming to Dubai." "What?" "He called me yesterday. Said he wanted to see the demonstration. Wanted to see the pilot who flew his daughter to him when he was dying." She smiled faintly. "We've talked every day since the hospital. Really talked. For the first time in 5 years." "That's good." "It's terrifying and wonderful, and I don't know how to feel about it." "Maybe you don't have to know. Maybe you just have to show up." Victoria looked at him. Really looked at him. "When did you get so wise?"
I'm not wise. I'm just old enough to know that life doesn't give you many second chances. When it does, you take them. She reached over and squeezed his hand. Brief, warm. Then she stood up. Get some sleep, Captain Cole. You've got a world to impress tomorrow. Dubai was overwhelming. The heat hit Marcus the moment he stepped off the plane. Dry and intense, nothing like the humidity of Los Angeles. The city rose around them, glass and steel towers reaching toward a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The expo grounds were massive. Aircraft everywhere. Military jets, commercial planes, helicopters, experimental designs. Thousands of people moved through the exhibition halls, speaking dozens of languages. Their demonstration was scheduled for the final day. Prime slot. Sunset. That's when the light is best, Victoria explained. The whole world will be watching. The day before the demonstration, Marcus walked the grounds alone. He needed to clear his head, to find some quiet space in all the chaos. He found himself standing in front of a memorial wall. Photos of pilots who died in service. Names and dates and brief descriptions of their sacrifice. One face caught his eye. Young, eager, familiar. Lieutenant Jason Mitchell, 1986 to 2014. Killed during experimental flight testing. Marcus's knees nearly gave out. He hadn't known. Hadn't looked. For 8 years, he'd avoided anything connected to Mitchell's death. And now, here was his face, smiling from a wall in Dubai, forever young. They honored him, Victoria said from behind him. Marcus didn't turn around. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. She moved beside him, looked at Mitchell's photo. The Air Force submitted his name 2 years ago. He's recognized as a pioneer in aviation safety. The failure that killed him led to system improvements that have saved hundreds of lives. That doesn't bring him back. No, but it gives his death meaning. Marcus reached out, touched the edge of Mitchell's photo. He was going to propose to his girlfriend when he got back. Did you know that? He had the ring in his locker. Showed it to everyone. Did she know? His girlfriend? I don't know. I never contacted her. Never contacted his family. I couldn't face them. Marcus's voice broke. I was a coward. You were grieving. I was hiding. Just like I hid for 8 years. Just like I would have kept hiding if you hadn't... He stopped. Couldn't finish. Victoria put her hand on his shoulder. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it enough? I don't know. But I think Mitchell would want you to fly tomorrow. I think he'd want you to show the world what the two of you were working toward. She paused. Don't you? Marcus looked at the photo. Young eyes, eager smile, a life cut short. Yeah, he said quietly. I think he would. The morning of the demonstration, Marcus woke before dawn. He couldn't eat, couldn't sit still. He did push-ups until his arms gave out, then stood at the window watching the sun rise over Dubai. Noah found him there an hour later. Dad, are you okay? Just nervous, buddy. Noah climbed onto the chair beside him. I had a dream about Mom last night. Marcus's breath caught. You did? She was smiling. She said she was proud of you. She said today was going to be really special. Marcus pulled his son close. I hope she's right. She's always right, even when she's in heaven. At the expo grounds, thousands of people had already gathered. The demonstration area was packed, bleachers full, VIP sections overflowing, press platforms crowded with cameras. Marcus stood beside the jet Victoria had provided, white and silver, sleek and beautiful. The Langford Aerotech logo gleamed on the tail. Tom Rivera was there, running final checks. Everything's perfect, Captain. She's ready when you are.
Thanks, Tom. Victoria appeared with her father. Charles Langford was older than Marcus expected. White hair, weathered face, eyes that held the weight of decades in aviation. "So you're the man who saved my daughter's life," Charles said. "I just flew the jet, sir." "You did a hell of a lot more than that." Charles extended his hand. "I've heard a lot about you, Captain Cole. From Victoria, from the training reports, from my old friends in the Air Force." Marcus shook his hand. "I hope it was mostly good."
It was all good, except the part where you spent 8 years cleaning toilets instead of flying.
Charles smiled. "But I understand. Sometimes we need to disappear before we can come back."
You sound like you speak from experience.
Spent 2 years on a fishing boat in Alaska after my wife died. Didn't touch an aircraft the whole time. Charles's eyes grew distant. Some losses take longer to heal than others. The important thing is that you heal eventually. Mrs. Chen appeared with Noah. "It's almost time." Noah looked up at Marcus with those eyes, Sarah's eyes, full of trust and excitement. "You're going to be amazing, Dad." Marcus knelt down, pulled his son into a hug. "Whatever happens up there, I want you to know something." "What?" "You're the reason I'm doing this. You and your mom. Everything I've ever done right in my life. It's because of you two." Noah hugged him tighter. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, buddy. More than anything." Marcus stood up, looked at Victoria, at Charles, at Mrs. Chen, at Tom. All of them believing in him. All of them waiting for him to fly. "Time to go," he said. He climbed the stairs to the jet, entered the cockpit, and strapped himself in. The familiar embrace of the pilot's seat, the familiar smell of aviation, the familiar weight of the controls in his hands. This was where he belonged. This was who he was. The radio crackled. "Langford 1, you are cleared for demonstration. Runway is yours." Marcus took a deep breath, let it out slowly. "Roger that, Control. Langford 1 beginning demonstration." He pushed the throttle forward. The engines roared. The jet rolled down the runway, faster and faster, until the wheels lifted and he was airborne. The crowd fell away below him. Thousands of faces looking up. Cameras tracking his every move. Marcus climbed steep and fast, then leveled off at 2,000 feet. And then he flew. Every maneuver he'd practiced, every routine Whitfield had drilled into him. It all came together in a performance that made the crowd gasp. Barrel rolls so smooth they looked effortless. A vertical climb that seemed to touch the sky. A dive that brought him screaming toward the ground, pulling up at the last second with G-forces that pressed him into his seat. The jet responded like an extension of his body. Every input translated into motion. Every thought became action. Marcus flew figure eights across the sunset sky. He traced spirals that left vapor trails hanging in the air. He pushed the aircraft to its limits, then pulled it back, always in control, always precise. 20 minutes passed in what felt like seconds. The final maneuver, a slow roll directly over the crowd. Wings vertical, then inverted, then back to level. The sun caught the aircraft's silver skin, and for a moment, it looked like Marcus was flying through fire. He lined up for landing, descended smooth and steady. The runway rose to meet him. The wheels touched down, soft as a whisper. The jet rolled to a stop. Silence. Then, thunder. The crowd exploded. 60,000 people on their feet, cheering, clapping, shouting. The sound was so loud it penetrated the cockpit, filled Marcus's ears, shook his chest. He shut down the engines, opened the canopy. The roar hit him like a wave. Marcus climbed out, stood on the wing. The crowd stretched before him, a sea of faces all looking at one man. Then he saw movement at the barrier. Small, fast, determined. Noah broke through the security line, running across the tarmac, Mrs. Chen chasing helplessly behind. "Dad! Dad!" Marcus jumped down from the wing just in time to catch his son as he leaped into his arms. "That's my dad!" Noah shouted to the crowd, to the cameras, to the world. "That's my dad!" People laughed, applauded harder. Victoria reached them next, tears streaming down her face. She didn't try to hide them. "You did it," she said. "My God, Marcus, you did it." He couldn't speak, could barely breathe. He just held Noah with one arm and pulled Victoria close with the other. Charles Langford appeared. His eyes were wet too. "That was the most beautiful flying I've ever seen," he said. "And I've seen a lot of flying." The press surrounded them within minutes. Cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward, questions shouted in every language. "Captain Cole, that was incredible! How long have you been flying? Where did you train?" Marcus answered as best he could, one hand still holding Noah's. Then a voice cut through the noise. An older man in an expensive suit, the Orion Industries logo on his lapel. "Captain Cole," he extended his hand. "I'm Robert Harrington, CEO of Orion Industries. That was the most extraordinary demonstration I've ever witnessed." Marcus shook his hand. "Thank you, sir. We'd like to honor the scholarship commitment immediately. Full educational funding for your son through any university he chooses." Harrington smiled. "It's the least we can do for a pilot of your caliber." Noah tugged Marcus's sleeve. "Dad, what does that mean?" Marcus knelt down, eye level with his son. "It means you can go to any school you want, buddy. Any college. Everything paid for." "Because you flew good?" "Because I flew my best." Noah's face lit up with that smile, Sarah's smile. "Mom would be so happy," he whispered. Marcus pulled him close. "Yeah, buddy, she would." That night, at the gala dinner, Marcus sat at the head table with Victoria, Charles, Noah, and Mrs. Chen. Speeches were made. Awards were given. His name was called more times than he could count. But through it all, he kept looking at Noah, at the boy who'd given him a reason to fly again, at the future he'd almost thrown away. After dinner, Victoria found him on the hotel balcony, hiding from the attention, getting some air. She stood beside him. Dubai stretched below, endless lights against the dark. "My father asked me something tonight," she said. "What?" "He asked if I was happy." Marcus turned to look at her. "What did you say?" "I said I'm getting there." She met his eyes. "Thanks to you." "I didn't do anything." "You did everything." She stepped closer. 3 months ago, I was a CEO who'd lost her way. I'd built an empire and forgotten why. I'd pushed away everyone who mattered. I was successful and miserable and completely alone. And now? Now I have my father back. I have a purpose beyond profit margins, and I have... She stopped. "What?" "I have you." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Is that crazy? Is it too fast?" Marcus thought about Sarah, about the years they'd had together, about the years they should have had. "Nothing's too fast," he said. "Life's too short to wait for perfect timing." Victoria smiled, that smile that had changed from cold to warm over the past months. "What happens now?" "Now we go home. I keep flying, you keep running your empire. We figure out the rest as we go." "That's not much of a plan." "Best plans I ever made fell apart anyway. Maybe winging it is better." She laughed, leaned against him. They stood there together, watching the city lights. Noah asked me something today, Victoria said.
What?
He asked if I'd be around for a while.
What did you tell him?
I told him I hoped so, if that was okay with his dad.
Marcus put his arm around her. It's okay with his dad. They stayed on the balcony until the stars came out. Somewhere below, a plane took off, red lights blinking against the darkness. Marcus watched it climb into the sky. 3 months ago, he'd been invisible, a janitor, a ghost of the man he used to be. Now he was a pilot again, a father who could look his son in the eye, a man who'd finally stopped running from his past.
And for the first time since Sarah died, he let himself imagine what the future might look like. It looked like hope. The flight home felt different. Marcus sat by the window, watching the clouds pass below. Noah was asleep against his shoulder, exhausted from the excitement of the past few days. Mrs. Chen dozed across the aisle. Victoria worked on her laptop, but every few minutes she'd look up and catch his eye, and something would pass between them that didn't need words. 3 months ago, Marcus had been invisible. A man with a mop, cleaning floors, hiding from everything he used to be. Now he was flying home as a hero. The word felt strange, wrong almost. Heroes were supposed to feel different, confident, certain. Marcus still felt like the same broken man who'd spent 8 years running from his past. But maybe that was the point. Maybe heroes weren't people who felt no fear. Maybe they were just people who kept going anyway. Los Angeles appeared through the clouds as they descended. The city spread below them, highways and buildings, and millions of lives intersecting in ways no one could predict. Somewhere down there was the hangar where Marcus had mopped floors, the apartment where he'd raised Noah alone, the cemetery where Sarah waited. "What are you thinking about?"
Victoria asked softly. Everything. Nothing. Marcus shifted slightly, careful not to wake Noah. Wondering what comes next.
"What do you want to come next?"
It was a simple question, but the answer was complicated. I want to fly, Marcus said. I want to be there for Noah. I want to... He stopped.
Want to what?
I want to stop being afraid. Victoria reached across the aisle, took his hand.
You faced 60,000 people yesterday. You flew the performance of your life. I'd say you've already stopped being afraid.
That's different. That's flying. I know how to do that. Marcus looked at her.
It's everything else that scares me.
Like what?
Like this. Us. Whatever this is becoming.
Victoria was quiet for a moment.
Does it have to be scary? Everything good is scary, because good things can be lost.
She squeezed his hand tighter.
Then we'll be scared together.
They landed at LAX just after sunset. A car was waiting to take them home. Noah woke up long enough to stumble from the plane to the vehicle, then fell asleep again with his head in Marcus's lap. Victoria dropped them at the apartment. She had meetings in the morning, calls to make, a company to run. But before she left, she stood at the car window and looked at Marcus for a long moment.
I'll see you Monday?
Monday.
Get some rest, Captain Cole.
You too, Ms. Langford. She smiled, that smile that had changed so much since the day they met, and the car pulled away. Marcus carried Noah upstairs. The apartment was quiet, familiar, unchanged, but it felt different now, smaller somehow, like Marcus had outgrown it without realizing. He put Noah to bed, tucked the blanket around him, and stood in the doorway, watching his son breathe.
We did it,
he whispered.
We really did it.
Noah stirred, mumbled something in his sleep, then settled again. Marcus walked to the kitchen,
poured himself a glass of water, and stood at the window looking out at the city. The same view he'd stared at for 3 years, the same lights, the same planes passing overhead. But he wasn't the same man. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. "Captain Cole, this is Colonel Whitfield. Just watched the footage from Dubai. Damn fine flying. The Thunderbirds could use a man like you. Call me if you're ever interested." Marcus read the message 3 times. The Thunderbirds. The elite demonstration squadron he'd dreamed about as a young pilot. An invitation that would have meant everything to him once. He typed back, "Thank you, Colonel. I'm honored. But I've got a family to raise. Maybe someday." The reply came quickly. "Understood. The sky will be there when you're ready." Marcus set down the phone and went to bed. For the first time in years, he slept without dreaming. Monday came faster than expected. Marcus arrived at the hangar early, before most of the staff. He wanted a few minutes alone with the jet, the aircraft that had carried him back to himself. He walked around it slowly, running his hand along the fuselage. Cold metal, smooth and perfect. The Langford logo caught the morning light. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" Marcus turned. Tom Rivera stood in the doorway, coffee cup in hand. "Yeah, she is." Tom walked over, handed Marcus a cup. "Black, 2 sugars. How you like it?" "You remembered." "I remember everything about the pilots I work with." Tom leaned against the jet. "So, what now?" "What do you mean?" "I mean you're famous now. The video from Dubai has 50 million views. Orion Industries is talking about you like you're the second coming. What's next for Captain Marcus Cole?" Marcus sipped his coffee. "I fly. I come home to my son. I figure out the rest as I go." "That's it? No grand plans?" "I've had enough grand plans for one lifetime. Right now, I just want to live." Tom nodded slowly. "That's probably the wisest thing I've ever heard a pilot say." Victoria found Marcus later that morning. She looked different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. "I have something to show you," she said. "Come with me." She led him through the hangar, past the jets, to a section he'd never seen before. A large room that had been empty for as long as he'd worked here. But it wasn't empty anymore. Desks had been set up, computers, flight simulators. On one wall, a banner read, "Cole Aviation Academy." Marcus stopped walking. "What is this?" "Your idea." Victoria turned to face him. "You mentioned once that you wished someone had helped you when you were young, given you a chance to fly, believed in you." "I said that?" "You implied it." She gestured around the room. "This is your chance to do that for others. A mentorship program for underprivileged kids who want careers in aviation. Flight training, mechanics, engineering, whatever they're interested in." Marcus walked slowly through the room, touching the desks, the equipment. Real. Solid. "Why did you name it after me?" "Because you're the one who's going to run it." He turned to look at her. "Victoria, I already have 30 students signed up. Kids from all over Los Angeles. Some of them have never even been on a plane before." She moved closer. "You told me once that you wanted to stop hiding. This is your chance to do more than that. This is your chance to help other people stop hiding too." Marcus looked around the room again, imagined it full of students, young faces, eager eyes. Kids like Mitchell had been once, hungry to fly, desperate for someone to believe in them. "When do we start?" Victoria smiled. "Next week, if you're ready." "I'm ready." The first class arrived on a Tuesday. 15 teenagers, ages 14 to 18. They came from neighborhoods Marcus knew well, places where opportunities were scarce and dreams were often crushed before they could take flight. They filed into the academy room slowly, uncertain. Some looked around with wonder. Others tried to act like they didn't care. Masks up, walls built. Marcus understood those walls. He'd built them himself. "My name is Captain Marcus Cole," he said, standing at the front of the room. "6 months ago, I was mopping floors in this hangar. Some of you might have heard about that." A few students exchanged glances. They'd heard. "I spent 8 years hiding from who I was, running from my past, telling myself I didn't deserve to fly anymore." Marcus paused. "I was wrong." The room was quiet. 15 pairs of eyes watching him. "I'm not here to tell you that aviation is easy. It's not. It takes discipline, focus, sacrifice. It takes failing over and over again until you finally get it right." He looked at each student in turn. "But I'm also here to tell you that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go. Your past doesn't define your future. And every single one of you has something inside you that's waiting to take flight." A hand went up. A girl in the front row, 16, maybe 17. Sharp eyes. "What made you stop hiding?" she asked. "After all that time?" Marcus thought about the question, about Victoria's mockery, about Noah's words, about Sarah's voice in his dreams. "Someone believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself," he said. "And then I had to decide whether to prove them right or prove myself wrong." "Which did you choose?" "I'm still choosing. Every day." Marcus moved around the desk, closer to the students. "That's the thing no one tells you. Courage isn't a one-time decision. It's a choice you make over and over, every time the fear tries to take you down." The girl nodded slowly. Something in her eyes shifted. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. "So," Marcus said, "who wants to learn how to fly?" Every hand went up. The weeks turned into months. Marcus flew charter routes during the days. San Francisco, Seattle, Phoenix, wherever Langford Aerotech needed him. But his afternoons belonged to the academy. 2 days a week, 3 hours each session, teaching kids who'd never imagined they could touch the sky. Some students dropped out. The work was hard, the commitment demanding. But most stayed. They showed up early, stayed late, asked questions Marcus had to research to answer. The girl from the first day, her name was Maria, turned out to be a natural. She absorbed information like a sponge, spent every spare moment in the simulator, and asked Marcus once if he thought she could be a commercial pilot. "I think you can be anything you want to be," he told her. "Even with where I come from?" "Especially with where you come from. People who've had to fight for everything understand the value of what they've earned. That makes you stronger than someone who's had everything handed to them." Maria looked at him with those sharp eyes. "Is that why you mop floors?" Marcus laughed. "I mopped floors because I was afraid. You're not afraid. That's the difference." Victoria visited the academy often. She brought equipment, funding, connections. But more than that, she brought belief. She looked at these kids the same way she looked at Marcus, like she could see who they were going to become. Charles Langford came too, when his health allowed. He sat in on lessons, told stories about the early days of aviation, and reminded the students that the sky had room for everyone. "My father started with nothing," he told them once. "One plane and a dream. Now we have 40 aircraft and operations in 12 countries. Don't let anyone tell you what's possible for your life. That's your decision, no one else's." Noah became a regular at the academy as well. He was too young for the formal program, but he sat in the back of the classroom, did his homework, and watched his father teach. Sometimes the older students would help him with his math, or show him things on the simulator. "Dad,
Noah said one evening after a particularly long session. "Those kids really like you." "You think so?" "Yeah. They look at you the same way I do." Marcus pulled him close. "And how's that?" "Like you're a superhero." 6 months after the academy opened, something happened that Marcus hadn't expected. He found himself on the rooftop of the hangar one evening, the same place where everything had started. Victoria was supposed to meet him there for dinner, a private celebration of the academy's success. But when she arrived, Marcus wasn't thinking about dinner. "You're nervous," Victoria said as she stepped off the elevator. "I can always tell when you're nervous. You get this look." "What look?" "Like you're about to take off without clearance." Marcus laughed, despite himself. "Maybe I am." Victoria walked toward him. She was wearing the same navy suit she'd worn the day they met. Probably not on purpose, but the symmetry felt right. "What's going on, Marcus?" He reached into his pocket. His fingers closed around the small box he'd been carrying for weeks. "I've been thinking about something you said to me once. In your office. When you gave me the contract." "I said a lot of things that day." "You said I should stop punishing myself, that I should stop letting fear steal the rest of my life." Marcus took her hand. "You were right. About all of it." Victoria's eyes went to his pocket, to the shape visible beneath the fabric. "Marcus, I spent 8 years running from pain, from loss, from the possibility that I might love someone again and lose them too." His voice caught. "But then I met you, and you showed me that running doesn't protect you from loss. It just guarantees you'll never have anything worth losing." He pulled out the box, opened it slowly. Inside was a simple silver ring, 2 small wings engraved on the band. "I had this made special," Marcus said, "because you gave me my wings back, and I want to spend the rest of my life flying beside you." Victoria's hand went to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Victoria Langford, will you marry me?" For a long moment she didn't speak. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. Then she laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Yes," she said.
Yes, you ridiculous, wonderful man. Yes.
Marcus slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. She pulled him into a kiss, soft at first, then deeper. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. "Noah's going to lose his mind," Victoria said. "He already knows." "What?" "He helped me pick the ring. He's been practicing keeping the secret for 2 weeks." Victoria laughed again. "That boy is something else." "He's the best thing I ever made." Marcus held her close. "And you're the best thing that ever happened to both of us." The wedding was small, just family and close friends. They held it at the hangar, the same hangar where Marcus had mopped floors, where Victoria had mocked him, where their whole story had begun. Noah was the ring bearer. He walked down the aisle with the concentration of a pilot making a precision landing, both rings balanced on a small white pillow. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row, crying before the ceremony even started. Charles Langford stood beside his daughter, healthy enough now to walk her down the aisle. Tom Rivera was there, along with Colonel Whitfield, who'd flown in from Texas. And in the back row, barely visible, were 15 teenagers from the academy. Maria had organized it. They'd all chipped in to buy a gift, a framed photo of the first class with a message that read, "Thank you for teaching us to fly." Marcus didn't see the students until after the ceremony. When he did, something broke inside him. Not pain this time, but gratitude. "You came," he said. "You're our teacher," Maria replied. "Of course we came." The reception was simple. Food, music, laughter. Noah danced with Victoria until he got dizzy and had to sit down. Charles gave a toast about second chances and stubborn pilots. Mrs. Chen told embarrassing stories about Marcus's early days as a father. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Marcus stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The runway stretched before him, empty in the evening light. A plane passed overhead, red lights blinking against the darkening sky. "Hey!" Victoria appeared beside him. She'd changed out of her wedding dress into something simpler, jeans and a sweater. Her hair was down. "You okay?" she asked. "More than okay." Marcus took her hand. "I was just thinking about how strange life is. A year ago, I was mopping floors and pretending I didn't exist. Now I'm married to the CEO of the company I worked for. I have students who call me captain. I have a son who's proud of me. Is that bad?" "It's terrifying." He looked at her. "But you taught me something about that." "What?" "That the things worth having are always terrifying, and that the brave thing is wanting them anyway." Victoria leaned against him. "When did you get so philosophical?" "Somewhere between the mop bucket and the cockpit." She laughed. That laugh he loved. They stood there together, watching the sky darken, watching the stars appear one by one. "What do you want to do now?" Victoria asked. Marcus thought about it, about the academy, about the students, about Noah, about all the flying he still had left to do. "I want to go home," he said, "and I want to wake up tomorrow and do it all again." "That's it? No grand plans?" "I spent too many years chasing grand plans, missing what was right in front of me." He turned to face her. "From now on, I just want to be present. For Noah, for you, for whoever needs me." Victoria smiled. "That sounds perfect." They went back inside. Noah ran up immediately, demanding to know when they could cut the cake. Mrs. Chen was organizing something in the corner. Charles was telling old war stories to anyone who would listen. Family. The thing Marcus had thought he'd lost forever. But you can't lose something that keeps finding new ways to exist. A year later, Marcus stood on that same rooftop, watching a plane take off from the runway below. Noah was at school. Victoria was in meetings. The academy was humming along. 30 students now, with a waiting list of 50 more. Maria had graduated the program. She was enrolled in flight school, well on her way to becoming the pilot Marcus always knew she could be. Tom Rivera had retired, but he still came by twice a week to tell stories and check on his aircraft. Charles Langford was in remission. The doctor said he might have years left. He spent most of them at the hangar, mentoring young entrepreneurs, reconnecting with a daughter he'd almost lost. And Mitchell, Lieutenant Jason Mitchell, had a scholarship named after him now. The Mitchell Memorial Fund, paying for underprivileged kids to pursue aviation careers. His girlfriend from all those years ago had reached out after seeing Marcus's story in the news. She'd cried when she heard about the fund, said it was exactly what Jason would have wanted. Marcus visited Sarah's grave once a month. He told her everything, about Noah, about Victoria, about the academy, about the life he was building from the ashes of the one they'd shared. He liked to think she could hear him, that somewhere, wherever she was smiling. On this particular morning, Marcus wasn't alone on the rooftop for long. The elevator doors opened. Noah stepped out, followed by Victoria. "There you are," Victoria said. "We've been looking everywhere." "Just thinking." Noah ran to the railing, pressed his face against the bars. "Can we see a plane take off?" "If we wait long enough." They stood together, father, son, wife, watching the runway. A jet appeared in the distance, taxiing toward position. The engines roared as it accelerated. Then it lifted off, climbing into the morning sky, leaving nothing behind but vapor trails and possibility. "That's going to be me someday," Noah said with absolute certainty. "Oh yeah?" Marcus smiled. What kind of pilot are you going to be?
The best kind, like you. Victoria slipped her hand into Marcus's. He's got a good role model. Marcus watched his son's face, lit up with dreams. He remembered being that young once, that certain, before life had taught him about loss and fear and the weight of survival. But life had also taught him something else, something more important, that broken things can be mended, that lost people can be found, that even the darkest nights eventually give way to dawn. I love you both, Marcus said quietly, more than I know how to say. Noah turned from the railing, crashed into Marcus's legs for a hug. We know, Dad. We love you too. Victoria kissed his cheek. Always. A plane passed overhead, red lights blinking. Another was preparing for takeoff below. The sky stretched endless above them, blue and vast and full of promise. Marcus Cole had spent 8 years hiding from who he was, running from pain, pretending to be less than he'd been born to be. But that man was gone now. In his place stood a pilot, a father, a husband, a teacher, a man who had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the decision to keep going anyway. The sun climbed higher. The city woke up around them. And somewhere below, in the hangar where everything had started, a mop stood in the corner, unused and forgotten. Some things you don't need anymore once you've finally learned to fly. Marcus looked at his family, looked at the sky, felt the weight of everything he'd been given and everything he still had left to give. And for the first time in his life, he knew, really knew, that he was exactly where he belonged. Not in the sky, not on the ground, but home. Finally, completely, and forever home.